If he moved now, he would give away his position. The first thing he needed to do was summon more undead. If he had some guards, his victory was certain, even if the Lizardman was still alive. As he was about to cast, Iguvia suddenly heard a splash. One of the 4 great treasures had been handed down through generations of Lizardmen Frostpain. Legend said that it was carved out of the ice that formed the only time the lake that never froze. It had 3 powers. The first was the ability to deal additional chill damage when cutting an opponent because its blade was enchanted. The second was the special move Icy Burst, which could be used 3 times per day. And the third, the air sounded like it was ripping. The tip of a sharp blade appeared in Iguvia's field of vision faster than he could even detect what it was. Something made impact in his head. The blade that had entered his left eye disturbed his brain. Finally understanding what had happened, Iguvia screamed in shock. "Gar, why aren't you dead?" Frost pain was sticking deep in his left eye socket, and he felt a chunk of his life disappear. Zayusu's hazy figure appeared before Iguvia in the mist, covered in frost, as the Elder Lick reeled with the blade still in his head. Iguvia couldn't understand. How was Zayusu still standing after taking so much chill damage? Frostpain's third power protected the one who equips it from virtually all chill damage. Of course, even though Frostpain's defense against the cold was strong, it wasn't enough to completely nullify Icy Burst. Zayusu was weakened by the chill damage, and it was all he could do to stand. He was panting, and his movements were slow. His tail was even drooping into the water. Even breathing was too much work. It would be near impossible to fight anymore. He hadn't even aimed that attack. He just mustered the last remnants of his strength and left it up to instinct. It was only luck that he even hit him. Zayusu's eyelids threatened to close, but he desperately fought to keep them open. The blow he driven into Iguvia using the last of his strength had been fatal. He watched with a faint sense of anticipation. Iguvia groped and staggered. As if he could no longer maintain his body, the skin on his face peeled off. Cracks appeared in the bone. Even his clothes began to disintegrate into tatters. His destruction was only a matter of time now. The moment Zayusu confirmed his miraculous victory, a hand of skin and bones reached out. It grabbed his neck. "I was created by my master as his minion. Do you really think you can destroy me so easily?" Grip seemed easy to break, but a scream escaped Zayusu's lips. Intense pain shot through his entire body. Negative energy was flowing in, robbing Zayusu of his life. Even Zayusu, trained to withstand pain, had no way to manage the chill that was being directly injected into his veins. Lizardman, part of Iguvia's face chipped off. It floated up, crumbling into the sky. His life was almost at its end, but his devotion to his master made him cling to it. Zayusu desperately resisted, but he was frightened his body wouldn't move quite right. Zayusu didn't have much life force left. The injection of negative energy from Iguvia's touch was completely sapping him. His gaze wavered, and his vision started to go dim. A white fog seemed to be covering the world. Iguvia was also mobilizing all the fading consciousness he could muster. He smiled in victory at Zayusu and his rapidly weakening resistance. He would kill this Lizardman, then he would kill the other 2 who had come at him. These are probably top-class Lizardmen, so if he killed them, they would be fitting sacrifices to the Great One, his creator. His expression spoke louder than words. Zayusu could tell what he was thinking. Zayusu's body wouldn't move right. He could feel his temperature dropping like poison was coursing through his body. It was even hard to breathe. Only his mental faculties were sharp. He couldn't die yet. Rororo had run so hard. Zenbal had been his shield. Crush had used up all her magic, and that wasn't all. He could feel the weight on his shoulders of all the Lizardmen who had fallen in this battle. Faint noises came to Zayusu's ears as he frantically groped for a way to fight. He heard Crush's kind voice. He heard Zenbal's cheery voice. He heard Rororo's cry for attention. He shouldn't have been able to hear them. Crush was unconscious. Zenbal was in a coma, and Rororo was far away. Was his brain just imagining the voices because his consciousness was muddled? Was he imagining words from his friends, whom he met only a week ago, and the cries of his family? No, he wasn't imagining them. They were all there with him. Yarak, you still have that much power? Half-conscious Zayusu raised a war cry at the same time Iguvia shouted in surprise. Zayusu's eyes rolled to stare down at Iguvia. Egyuvia's face was twitching with rage to see the energy in Zayusu's gaze. Before this, the Lizardman hadn't even been able to make eye contact. Crush, Zenbul, Rororo, what are you planning to do? Where did that life force even come from? With every passing moment, the vast negative energy sapped and devoured Zayusu's life force. His limbs were heavy, his body felt as cold as ice. Still, as he shouted each name, he felt warmth. The power welling up in him wasn't just life force deep in his chest, it was heart. Something made a squeaking noise. It was Zayusu's right hand. He balled it into a tight fist. In it, he gathered all his remaining energy. Of all the ridiculous things, why can you still move? You monster! Egyuvia couldn't believe his eyes. The Lizardman could still move. A creeping horror rushed through his mind, but he frantically suppressed it. He was Egyuvia. He had been deployed from the great tomb of Nazarick to command the army. And most importantly, he had been created by the Great One, Aints Ul Gaun. He couldn't allow himself to be defeated. This is the end, monster. The full force punch came one moment before Egyuvia could flood him with more negative energy. Zayusu took his tightly balled fist and slammed it into Frost Pain's hilt. The blow was hard enough to draw blood from Zayusu's hand. It caused the tip of the sword in Egyuvia's left orbit to go completely through his head. Arrgh! Egyuvia was undead, so he felt almost no pain, but he could comprehend that he was losing all his false life. Arrgh, how stupid! Lord Aints. Egyuvia's eyes showed complete understanding that he'd been defeated. Zayusu's body collapsed like a marionette whose strings had been cut. As he splashed into the marsh, forgive me, Egyuvia crumpled, apologizing to his master. A silence fell over the room. Unable to believe what they'd seen in the mirror, no one spoke besides the maid, Entoma. Master Cocytus, it appears Lord Aints is calling Yawu. Understood. With his head hanging down, Cocytus slowly turned to face Entoma. Feeling the anxious gazes of his minions, he bit back the humiliation. On the other hand, however, he admired the Lizardmen. It had been a magnificent fight. Against what should have been overwhelming odds, they achieved victory. Certainly the Elder Lick wasn't perfect, but he still should have been able to win. Magnificent. Just magnificent. The repeated word revealed Cocytus's genuine feelings. They had cleared an impossible hurdle. It's too bad, he murmured at the scene in the mirror of the Lizardmen cheering with joy at their victory. The warriors reflected in the mirror looked so small and weak, but they set his heart on fire. What a waste! Cocytus wasn't sure what to do. Of his countless thoughts, he grasped one, the most horrible one. He thought hard and reached a conclusion. I guess I should go. Zayusu felt his body being lifted out of a pitch-black world. It was a pleasant sensation. His eyes opened. The world looked hazy through his freshly woken eyes. Where am I? Why am I sleeping in a place like this? A number of questions came to mind. At the same time, he realized he felt a weight on top of him. White, that was the first word that came to his still groggy mind. Then, as he woke up, he understood what it was. Crush. She was sleeping on top of him. She was alive. The relief was so strong he nearly vocalized it, but he managed to hold it back at the last second. He didn't want to wake her up. He frantically suppressed the urge to touch her. Just because a female's scales were pretty didn't he make it okay to stroke her while she was sleeping. Zayusu chased her from his mind and tried to think about something else. He had a lot to consider. First, the reason he was here. He searched his memory to try to remember what had happened. His last memory was destroying Egyuvia. His recollection cut off abruptly after that, but his lying here instead of being captured meant that the tribes must have won. Careful not to wake Crush, he breathed a sigh of relief. The weight of the past few days seemed to lighten a little. Certainly, thinking with a level head, the burden was still heavy. They didn't know the true identity of their enemy yet. They also didn't know what they were after. There was more than a good chance that they would attack again. No, if his hunch was right, they would come again. But just for right now, he wanted to be allowed to relax. He sighed lightly again, feeling Crush's body heat. Then he gently flexed his muscles from head to tail. He had no problems moving. He thought he might have lost something, but everything seemed all right. Then he remembered the comrades he fought with. There were no other Lizardmen in the room besides Crush. Where was Zenbul? A flicker of anxiety crossed his mind. At the same time, he felt certain that a male as strong as Zenbul couldn't possibly have been defeated. Perhaps responding to Zayusu's slight movement, Crush stretched slightly. It felt like a core had formed in her soft body. She must be about to wake up. NGH Crush made a cute noise. Then she flicked her hazy eyes around, taking in the area. Finding Zayusu underneath her, she broke into a smile. Crush groggily wrapped her arms around Zayusu and rubbed her body against him, just like an animal leaving its scent. Zayusu froze and let her do as she pleased. In a corner of his mind, he also had some less noble thoughts. He thought, well, she started it. Her glossy white scales were cool and pleasant to the touch. The fragrant herbal scent that hung in the area was entrancing. Maybe he could put his arms around her too. As he was anguishing over the question, Crush's eyes gradually began to focus. Then she turned them to Zayusu beneath her. She froze. She stopped moving with her arms still around him. Zayusu considered what he should say first and ended up choosing the most benign thing he could come up with. Can I put my arms around you too? He thought it was benign in his excited state of mind. Crush made a threatening noise and thrashed her tail around. Then she rolled away from Zayusu's body, not stopping until she crashed into the wall. Face down, she groaned softly. He also heard her say, "Stupid, stupid, I am so stupid. Well, I am just glad you're safe." At those words, she must have finally regained composure. Her tail was still wriggling around, but she looked up and smiled at him. "I am glad you're safe too." Seeing her kind face, Zayusu had something else on his mind, but he held it back with all his willpower and asked a serious question. "Do you have any idea what happened after all that?" "Yeah, I have an idea. It seems like the enemy retreated thanks to your victory over Aguvua, and your brother managed to beat the monsters too. Then the three of us got saved. This was all yesterday. So Zenbul isn't here, but he is safe. He must have more regenerative power than you. I heard he regained consciousness right after the healing magic was cast. Now he is probably working on post-fight cleanup. I was so unbelievably tired. I guess I passed out again after hearing that much." Crush stood up and went back to Zayusu. When she sat down right next to him, Zayusu moved to sit up too, but she gently stopped him. "Don't overdo it. You were the one with the worst injuries out of all of us." Perhaps because she remembered him as he was then, her voice became frail. "I am glad you're safe. I am so glad." She lowered her eyes. Zayusu rubbed her back to comfort her. "I won't die until I hear your answer. I was worried you were dead." "Answer." The word made them both pause. Neither of them said anything. The room got so quiet they could practically hear each other's hearts beating. Crush's tail slowly curled around Zayusu's the tangled black and white extremities brought to mind mating snakes. Zayusu gazed silently at Crush. She looked back at him. They could see themselves reflected in the other's eyes. Zayusu quietly spoke. It wasn't speech, really. It was a call, the same one he made the first time they met, a mating call. After he called, he did nothing. He couldn't do anything. His heart just beat earnestly, violently. Eventually, the same call flowed from Crush's mouth. It had the same high pitch, the same vibrato at the end. She was accepting the mating call. On her face was an indescribably seductive expression. Zayusu could no longer take his eyes off her. Crush got on top of him, in virtually the same position as when she'd been sleeping on him. There was almost no distance between their two faces. Their hot breaths mixed, and the beating of their hearts synchronized through their touching chests. Then the two of them became one. "Yo, are you guys doing it?" The door banged open and Zenbul barged in. Crush and Zayusu both halted, as if they turned into ice sculptures. Perplexed, Zenbul observed the two of them. Crush was still on top of Zayusu and he cocked his head. "What, you just getting started?" Understanding what he meant, the pair moved apart without a word. Then they slowly stood up and approached Zenbul. He'd been looking down at them with curiosity, but now he bent over double. Gah-hngh. Their fists in his abdomen knocked the wind out of him, and his large body sank to the floor. "Arg, nice equipment. They're especially Crush arg. That seriously hurt Zayusu aside. Apparently even the female's punch of rage had the potential to take Zenbul out. Of course, a single blow wouldn't be enough to satisfy their frustration. Even if they pummeled him, the ruined atmosphere wouldn't go back to the way it had been. They grasped each other's hands to ease the worries pricking at their minds like pins. They questioned Zenbul, though it couldn't replace what they'd been about to do. More importantly, "We have a ton of questions. I asked Crush too, but please fill me in on our current status." Zenbul answered without paying attention to the fact that the pair was holding hands. The whole tribe is celebrating our win, So my brother is in charge of that, basically. We sent the hunters out to search for the enemy, but they couldn't find them. There was no sign of any hidden follow-up wave. That big of a force would stick out if they were on the move. That's why, even though we were still on guard, your brother declared victory for the time being. Actually, I am here because of something your brother said to me. My brother, yeah, he said, "Gah ha 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 ha, we should let the two of them rest." Maybe they are doing it, ha 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 ha. I don't want to bother them, but I am curious, ha 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 ha. Don't lie to me. What else with the ha 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 ha? Yes, I guess he wasn't saying ha 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 ha. My brother would never laugh like that. Jeez. But it was that kind of undertone. You ray the worst. Crush spoke with a voice chilly enough for another icy burst. It was so creepy that it sent shivers up even Zayusu's spine. Zenbul, at whom it had been directed, shuddered and froze for a moment. So why are you here? Right, if you say you came here just to bother us, I am going to blast you with every spell I can think of. Crush was dead serious. Both Zenbul and Zayusu could tell. Come on, what? I came to invite you guys. We ray VIPs, you know, we can not go. And when you think about what might happen in the future, I see catching the implied meaning in Zenbul's vague words. Zayusu smiled bitterly. It's a good chance to talk up our strength, in case there's another battle. Got it, you ray okay too, Crush. Her cheeks puffed up with just a bit of dissatisfaction, making her look like the Derms frogs who inhabited the marsh. Of course, they were totally different on the cuteness scale, Zayusu thought. Then shall we? Zenbul asked the two who were looking at each other in a carefree voice. Why yeah, I guess. Let us go. Both of them agreed, so they joined Zenbul and went outside. The moment they stepped off the stairs of the house and into the marsh, Crush and Zenbul lost sight of Zayusu. Something huge had pounced and sent him flying. Bam, flop, 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 curse, splash. Those were the sounds of what happened next. Rororo had taken Zayusu's place. His forehead squirmed healthily, and he happily turned his noses to Zayusu, who had fallen into the marsh. Rororo, you ray okay too? Zayusu stood up, covered in mud, and went back to Rororo. He gave the Hydra a thorough once-over as he pet him. He must have been healed with magic. It was like the burns had never been there. Rororo called out and wrapped his heads around Zayusu for attention. Was so tenaciously curled around him that he was completely hidden. Moan, Rororo, knock it off. Zayusu laughed and told Rororo to stop, but Rororo happily cooed at him without letting up. Splash, curse, splash, curse, splash. Suddenly Zayusu heard a series of rhythmic splashes. When he looked for the source, he was puzzled. It was Crush. Her face practically glowed with emotion as she gazed at Zayusu and Rororo, but her tail was beating out a regular rhythm on the marsh. Zenbul had been standing next to her, but he had begun inching away, his face twitching. Rororo stopped moving. He must have sensed something strange as well. What's wrong? And nothing. Zayusu was confused when she asked him. She was definitely smiling. It couldn't be anything but gladness that Rororo and Zayusu were reunited. So why were this many chills going up his spine? Goof. Crush smiled again. Rororo's heads moved away from Zayusu, freeing him. Zenbul twitched. Perhaps he opened his mouth to hide his inability to bear the awkwardness. Okay, Rororo. Let us you and me go on ahead of them. Of course, Rororo couldn't understand Lizardmen language, but maybe he sensed the mood anyway, because once Zenbul was on top of him, they splashed off at a pretty quick clip. A bizarre silence fell between Zayusu and Crush as the other two fled. Crush held her head in her hands and shook it side to side. Oh gosh, what am I doing? It's like my heart doesn't belong to me anymore. Why can't I stop it when I know it's not smart? This is basically the same as a curse. Zayusu understood how she felt because that's how he'd been when he first met her. Crush. Honestly, I am happy. What? A splash, bigger than the others up till now sounded. Then Zayusu went next to her. Listen, can you hear that? It's what we protected, and what we have to protect from now on too. They could hear high-spirited voices partying on the wind. Everyone must have been drinking. It was a party to return the ancestral spirits and celebrate their victory, but also to mourn the dead. Normally, alcohol was a valuable item. The reason they could drink so much these past few days was that Zenbul had brought the great treasure. This treasure gave them an infinite supply of drink. Since all the tribes were gathered, the resulting din was unbelievable. Listening to the huge racket, Zayusu smiled at Crush next to him. Maybe nothing is over yet. Maybe the Great One or whoever will attack us again. But just for today, how about we relax? He put his hands around her hips. Crush let herself be drawn in close and rested her head on his shoulder. Wanna go? Yes, she hesitated a moment and then added, dear. The two lizard men huddled together and disappeared into the party. Cocytus's footsteps fell heavily on his way to the throne room. As if his mood had infected the minions following him, their steps were also dark and weighty. Their mood was appropriate after suffering defeat at the hands of the Lizardmen. Cocytus had commanded the shining army of Nazarick, but all he had reaped was loss and ignominy. Certainly, Cocytus thought highly of the Lizardmen.